Where is my dress? Jasmine, listen to me. Next time, pay attention.
Yes, Jasmine.
You are just a maid. You can't tell me what to do.
Help me! Somebody help me!
Jasmine, where are you going?
To see my friends.
In this weather?
I'll drive carefully.
No, you stay.
I'll be back.
You're staying home.
Dad!
You heard me.
What is going on?
Your daughter wants to go out in this weather.
She'll be fine. She is an adult. Thank you, Mom. Hello? You've been drinking. I can drive. You should call someone. I said I'm fine. You really shouldn't drive. I don't need a driver. Hello? Where are you? I'm on my way home. Be careful. I know.
Call an ambulance! Please hurry! She has lost a lot of blood. We need to stabilize her.
Please save my daughter.
We're doing everything we can. We need blood urgently. None of you match your daughter.
God, please save my daughter. Use mine.
Yours?
Yes.
It worked! She's a match! We can save her!
Thank God.
Are you her real mother?
Jasmine, how are you feeling?
Better.
I brought you something to eat.
Julie. Julie has this birthmark too. I have seen it. Julie, the poor maid, is my biological mother. Dad? Mom? Speak to me!
My child, we can explain.
Please forgive us.
No, this can't be true.
I am.
You, the maid? How can someone like you be my mother?
Jasmine, that's enough.
No! I have spent my entire life believing that Martha was my mother. She raised you.
Yes.
Then what am I supposed to call you?
I don't know.
For more than 23 years, Julie had lived in the Bayo family mansion. She had entered the house as a young woman with very little to her name. At 41, she was now one of the longest-serving members of staff in the household. She knew every corner of the mansion. She knew which cupboard Martha kept her expensive lace fabrics in. She knew exactly how Chief Clem liked his morning tea. She knew which meals Jasmine loved and which ones she refused to touch. But there was one thing nobody in the mansion knew. Julie was not just an employee. She was Jasmine's mother. And for 22 years, she had watched her own daughter grow up without being allowed to call her daughter. It was a secret that had begun with desperation. 23 years earlier, Chief Clem and his wife, Martha, had already been married for several years. Clem was a successful businessman who had built a comfortable life for himself. Martha came from a respectable family and was known for her expensive taste and strong personality. From the outside, they appeared to have everything. Everything except a child. For years, they tried hospitals, doctors, medications, pills. Nothing worked. As the years passed, the pressure became unbearable for Martha. Her mother-in-law made sure she felt it every chance she got. At family gatherings, she would make pointed remarks. When will this house finally hear the sound of a child? Sometimes she said it directly to Martha. Other times she said it loudly enough for everyone to hear. Martha would force a smile, but the words followed her home. She cried about it many nights. Clem always tried to comfort her. Don't listen to them. How can I not listen? Martha would ask. Everyone thinks I'm the reason we don't have a child. We'll keep trying. We have been trying for years. Eventually, they sought more medical help. The doctors explained that having a child would be difficult. The couple were devastated. Then one evening, Clem and Martha had a conversation that neither of them would ever forget. They were sitting quietly in their bedroom when Martha finally spoke. "Clem, what if we found another way?" He looked at her. "What way?" She hesitated. Then she told him what she had been thinking. They could ask someone to help them have a child. It was not an easy conversation. But desperation had already pushed them far beyond what they thought they would ever consider. That was when Julie came into the picture. Julie was only 18 at the time. She had been working for the Bayos for several months. She was quiet, hardworking, and respectful. But she was also desperately worried about her mother. Her mother had become seriously ill and needed an operation. The hospital bills were far beyond what Julie could afford. She had borrowed money. She had begged relatives. She had worked extra hours. Still, it wasn't enough. Then Clem and Martha approached her. The conversation left Julie speechless. They wanted her to sleep with Clem so she could become pregnant and give them the child they had desperately wanted. Julie immediately refused. "I can't do that." Martha looked down. "We understand." Julie turned to leave. Then Clem mentioned her mother. "We know about the operation." Julie stopped. Clem continued. "We will pay for it." She slowly turned around. "You will?" "Yes." Julie stared at them. Her mother's face immediately came to mind. The hospital bed. The doctors. The unpaid bills. The fear that she could lose the only family she had. She struggled with the decision. It took days before she finally agreed. But she had one condition. "If I have the baby," she said quietly, "I want to stay here." Martha looked at her. "Why?" "I want to help raise the child." Martha exchanged a glance with Clem. Finally, they agreed. They made a promise. The arrangement would remain a secret. Nobody would ever know that Julie was the child's biological mother. Julie became pregnant. And for the first time in years, Martha felt hopeful. But as Julie's pregnancy progressed, Martha became increasingly anxious. She knew people would ask questions. She knew they would want to see her pregnant. She knew she couldn't simply explain that another woman was carrying the child she had always dreamed of. So Martha came up with a plan. She would pretend to be pregnant. She started wearing loose clothing. She avoided people whenever possible. She stopped attending certain social functions. She even arranged for people to believe she was expecting. Months later, Julie gave birth to a beautiful baby girl. The moment Martha held the newborn in her arms, tears filled her eyes. After years of humiliation, she finally had a baby. Her baby. At least, that was what everyone would believe. They named her Jasmine. Martha was overjoyed. She spent hours holding the baby. She bought expensive clothes. She decorated a beautiful nursery. She called relatives and proudly announced that she had finally become a mother. Julie watched from a distance. She had just given birth to her own daughter. But she couldn't hold her openly. She couldn't introduce herself as her mother. She couldn't even tell the baby who she was. Still, she remembered the promise. She would remain in the house. She would watch Jasmine grow. And that was enough for her. At least she thought it would be. She had no idea that staying close to her daughter would eventually become the greatest sacrifice of her life. Jasmine grew up surrounded by love, money, and attention. Martha made sure of it. After years of being mocked for not having a child, she was determined to give Jasmine the kind of life that would make everyone who had ever pitied her envious. Nothing was too expensive. Nothing was too much. When Jasmine was 3, Martha hired the best tutors she could find. When she turned 5, she enrolled her in one of the most expensive schools in the city. At 8, she had already traveled outside the country several times. At 10, she had her own tablet. By 13, she was receiving designer clothes and expensive gifts from her parents. Martha wanted her daughter to have everything she had never had. But there was one thing Martha couldn't control. Jasmine loved Julie. When Jasmine was younger, she didn't care that Julie was a maid. To her, Julie was simply the woman who was always there. If Jasmine woke up from a nightmare, Julie was the one she called. If she had a fever, Julie stayed beside her. If she refused to eat, Julie patiently prepared something else. And whenever Martha and Clem were away on business trips, Julie was the one who made sure Jasmine never felt alone. One afternoon, when Jasmine was about 6 years old, She came running into the kitchen. Julie! Julie turned around. Yes, my dear? Look what I drew. She held up a piece of paper. Julie smiled. Wow. Is this me? Yes. And who is this? Me. Julie laughed. You made me look so beautiful. You are beautiful. Julie froze for a moment. Those simple words meant everything to her. She wanted to pull Jasmine into her arms and tell her the truth. I am your mother. But she couldn't. Instead, she hugged the little girl. Thank you, my child. Jasmine smiled and ran away. Julie watched her go. For a few seconds, she allowed herself to imagine what life would have been like if she could openly call Jasmine her daughter. Then she heard Martha's voice. Julie! She immediately wiped her eyes. Yes, ma'am? Martha stood at the kitchen entrance. Why are you sitting there? I was just. Did I ask you to sit? No, ma'am. Then get back to work. Julie lowered her head. Yes, ma'am. That became the pattern of her life. She raised Jasmine. But she was never allowed to claim her. She loved her. But she had to pretend that she was only doing her job. And as Jasmine grew older, the distance between them slowly changed. At first, Jasmine still respected Julie. She would greet her. She would ask her for help. She would sometimes sit in the kitchen and tell her stories. But then she started noticing how Martha treated Julie. Martha rarely spoke to Julie kindly. Julie, clean the guest room again. Julie, why is this table still dusty? Julie, I told you to wash those clothes separately. If Julie tried to explain herself, Martha would immediately shut her down. You are a maid. Just do your work. Jasmine watched. She absorbed everything. Children often learn more from what they see than what they are told. And Jasmine began to believe that Julie's position made her less deserving of respect. By the time Jasmine was 16, the sweet little girl who once called Julie her favorite person had disappeared. One afternoon, Jasmine came home from school and threw her handbag onto the sofa. Julie! Julie hurried out. Yes. Take this upstairs. Julie picked up the bag. Where should I put it? In my room. Yes, Ma. Jasmine looked at her. And bring me something to eat. What would you like? Anything. Julie nodded. She walked away. A few minutes later, she returned with food. Jasmine took one bite. Then frowned. This is cold. I can warm it up. I don't want it anymore. She pushed the plate away. Julie reached for it. As she turned around, Jasmine suddenly shouted. Wait! Julie stopped. You forgot my drink. I'll bring it. Do I have to tell you everything? Julie lowered her head. I'm sorry. Jasmine rolled her eyes. Just go. Julie walked away quietly. She didn't argue. She never did. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, Julie sat alone in her room. She thought about the little girl who used to run into her arms. She remembered Jasmine's tiny hands. Her first words. Her first day at school. The first time she had called her Mama Julie. Tears rolled down her cheeks. But Julie stayed. Because no matter how badly Jasmine treated her, she was still her daughter. Meanwhile, Martha was becoming increasingly uncomfortable with Julie's presence. She didn't like the way Julie looked at Jasmine. She didn't like how much time they had spent together over the years. Most of all, she feared that Jasmine might somehow discover the truth. So she began making Julie's life even harder. She criticized everything. She complained about her work. She accused her of being too attached to Jasmine. One day, Martha finally said it openly. You have been here for too long. Julie looked at her. Ma, you heard me. Julie's heart sank. I have nowhere else to go. That is not my problem. Julie swallowed. I can work harder. Martha scoffed. This isn't about your work. She stepped closer. You are becoming too comfortable here. Julie understood what she meant. Martha wanted her gone. But Julie shook her head. I won't cause any problems. I hope not. Martha walked away. Julie stood there quietly. She knew exactly why Martha wanted her gone. She was the only person in that house who knew the truth. But Clem would not allow Martha to send her away. Years earlier, He had promised Julie that she could remain in the house and help raise Jasmine. And despite everything that had happened, Clem intended to keep his word. So Julie stayed. She endured the insults, the humiliation, the loneliness, and the growing disrespect from Jasmine, all because she wanted to remain close to the daughter she had never been allowed to call her own. But Jasmine was changing quickly. She was becoming more rebellious. She started sneaking out. Then came the drinking. Then the parties. Then the lies. Chief Clem noticed. And unlike Martha, he wasn't willing to ignore it. One evening, Jasmine returned home after midnight. Clem was waiting in the living room. The moment she entered, she froze. "Where have you been?" Jasmine sighed. "Dad, I'm not a child. I asked you a question. I was with my friends. At midnight?" "So?" Clem stood up. "This is exactly what I've been warning your mother about." Martha immediately stepped in. "Clem, that's enough. No. She needs discipline. She is young. She is becoming irresponsible." Jasmine looked at her mother. Martha moved closer to her. "Go upstairs." Jasmine smiled. "Good night, Dad." She walked away. Clem looked at Martha in frustration. "You are spoiling this girl." Martha shrugged. "She will grow up." But Clem wasn't convinced. And neither was Julie. Because from the kitchen doorway, Julie had watched everything. She knew Jasmine was heading down a dangerous path. She wanted to protect her. She wanted to sit her down and talk to her. She wanted to tell her that she was her mother. But she couldn't. All she could do was watch. And wait. Until one rainy night, Jasmine's reckless behavior would put her life in danger. And the secret that had been buried for 22 years would finally begin to crack open. By the time Jasmine turned 18, she had become almost impossible to control. She was beautiful, confident, and completely aware that she came from a wealthy family. Her father had built a successful business empire, while her mother had made a name for herself selling expensive lace fabrics to wealthy clients. Money was never a problem in the Bayo household. If Jasmine wanted something, she got it. If she broke something, another one was bought. If she got into trouble, Martha found a way to protect her. That was why Jasmine rarely thought about consequences. She had learned that there would always be someone to clean up her mess. And most times, that person was Julie. One Saturday afternoon, Jasmine returned from shopping with several bags in her hands. She dropped them in the middle of the sitting room. "Julie!" Julie came rushing from the kitchen. "Yes, Jasmine? Take these upstairs." Julie looked at the bags. "There are quite a few of them." "So? I'll take them." Julie began picking them up. Jasmine watched her. "Careful with that one. It's expensive." "Yes. And don't mix the shoes with the clothes." "Yes, Jasmine." Julie carried everything upstairs. She returned a few minutes later. Jasmine was already sitting on the sofa, scrolling through her phone. "My room is messy. I'll clean it. And I want my clothes arranged by color." Julie nodded. "I'll do that." Jasmine barely looked up. "Good." Julie walked away. She had become used to it. But sometimes the smallest things still hurt. Especially when she remembered that the young woman ordering her around was the same baby she had carried inside her body. Jasmine didn't know that Julie had once held her for hours after she was born. She didn't know Julie had stayed awake many nights just listening to her breathe. She didn't know that when she had been sick as a child, Julie had been more frightened than anyone else in the house. She didn't know that Julie had once secretly saved the first tooth she lost. She didn't know any of it. To Jasmine, Julie was simply the family maid. And Martha had worked hard to keep it that way. Martha never liked seeing Jasmine become too close to Julie. Whenever she noticed Jasmine sitting with Julie for too long, she found a reason to interrupt. "Jasmine, come upstairs." "Jasmine, I need you." "Jasmine, leave her to work." She wanted Jasmine's entire attention. She didn't want her daughter wondering why the maid cared so much about her. But there was another reason Martha kept Julie in the house. She was afraid of the secret being exposed. If Julie left, she could tell someone. She could reveal everything. So Martha was trapped. She couldn't trust Julie. But she couldn't send her away either. Instead, she tried to make the house unbearable for her. Sometimes she deliberately gave her too much work. Other times, she accused her of stealing. Once, Martha accused Julie of breaking an expensive perfume bottle. Julie insisted she hadn't touched it. But Martha refused to listen. "You are the only person who cleans this room." "Yes, ma'am." "So who else could have broken it?" Julie said nothing. Martha turned to Jasmine. "See what I have to deal with?" Jasmine looked at Julie with disgust. "You should be more careful." Julie nodded. "I'm sorry." She didn't defend herself. She never did. That night, Julie cried again. But she didn't cry loudly. She sat on the edge of her bed, covered her face and silently allowed the tears to fall. She had spent more than 2 decades sacrificing her life to stay close to Jasmine. She had never married. She had never built a family of her own. She had watched opportunities pass because she wanted to remain in the same house as her daughter. Sometimes she wondered if she had made the right decision. Then she would see Jasmine. And she would tell herself that it was worth it. Even if Jasmine didn't love her anymore. Even if Jasmine didn't know who she was. She was still her child. One evening, Jasmine came home furious. She had argued with one of her friends. She stormed into the house and threw her handbag onto the floor. Julie came forward. "Jasmine, are you okay?" "I'm fine." "You look upset." "Did I ask you?" Julie stopped. "I was only asking." "I don't need you asking me questions." Julie quietly stepped back. Jasmine picked up her phone and walked away. Later that evening, Clem called Jasmine into his study. "I heard you were fighting again." "Dad, it was nothing." "You need to start behaving responsibly." "I am responsible." "Responsible people don't sneak out every weekend." Jasmine rolled her eyes. "I am 22. And you still live under my roof." Martha walked in. "Clem, let her be." He looked at his wife. "This is exactly what I mean. She is an adult. She is acting like a child." Jasmine smiled. "Thank you, Mum." Martha smiled back. "You're welcome." Clem shook his head. He knew he was losing the battle. And he wasn't the only one worried. Julie had watched Jasmine's behavior become more reckless over the years. She was drinking more, going to parties more often, coming home at unreasonable hours. Sometimes Julie stayed awake until dawn waiting for her. One night, Jasmine came home around 2 in the morning. Julie was sitting in the living room. The moment the door opened, she stood. "Jasmine." Jasmine looked at her. "Why are you awake?" "I was waiting for you." "You don't have to." "I was worried." Jasmine laughed. "Worried about what?" "You're coming home very late." "I can take care of myself." Julie nodded. "I know." Jasmine walked past her. Then she stopped. "Don't wait for me again." Julie looked at her. "Okay." Jasmine went upstairs. Julie remained standing in the living room. Her eyes filled with tears. She wanted to tell her. She wanted to scream the truth. "I wait because I am your mother." But she couldn't. She had made a promise 22 years earlier. And she had spent her entire adult life keeping it. Meanwhile, Martha had begun to notice something else. Jasmine was becoming increasingly disrespectful toward Julie. At first, Martha had wanted Jasmine to keep her distance from Julie. But now she realized that Jasmine had gone beyond distance. She had developed the same contempt Martha had always shown. And instead of correcting her, Martha encouraged it. One afternoon, Jasmine slapped Julie because she had misplaced one of her dresses. The slap echoed through the room. Julie froze. Martha was standing nearby. She saw everything. But she said nothing. Jasmine stared at Julie. "Next time, pay attention." Julie slowly nodded. "Yes, Jasmine." She picked up the dress. Then she walked away. Martha watched her. For a moment, guilt crossed her face. But it disappeared quickly. She told herself that this was necessary. The secret had to remain buried. Julie had to remember her place. And Jasmine had to remain hers. Neither woman knew that their carefully guarded secret was about to become impossible to hide. Because soon, Jasmine would make one reckless decision that would put her in a hospital bed. And the person who would save her life would be the very woman she had spent years treating as if she were beneath her. Friday night came with heavy rain. The sky had been dark since late afternoon, and by evening, thunder could be heard from inside the Bayo mansion. Jasmine stood in front of her bedroom mirror, getting ready. She wore a short black dress, expensive perfume, and a pair of heels she had bought during her last trip abroad. Her phone kept buzzing. Her friends were already waiting for her. She picked up her handbag and headed downstairs. Julie was arranging some dishes in the dining room when she saw her. Jasmine? Jasmine turned. What? Are you going out? Yes. It is raining heavily. I know. Maybe you should wait until the rain reduces. Jasmine sighed. Julie, please. I am only worried because the roads. I said I'm going. Julie fell silent. She looked toward the window. The rain was coming down harder. Please be careful. Jasmine grabbed her car keys. I'll be fine. She walked toward the door. Then she heard her father's voice. Jasmine. She turned around. Chief Clem was coming down the stairs. Where are you going? To see my friends. Tonight? Yes. He glanced outside. Look at the weather. I'll drive carefully. Clem shook his head. You've been going out too much lately. Dad, I'm 22. That doesn't mean you can do whatever you want. Jasmine frowned. I'll be back. You're staying home. Dad. You heard me. Before Jasmine could respond, Martha entered the room. What is going on? Your daughter wants to go out in this weather. Martha looked at Jasmine. Then she looked at the rain. She'll be fine. Clem stared at his wife. Martha. She is an adult. She has been drinking lately. I know. And you still want her to go? She knows how to take care of herself. Jasmine smiled. Thank you, Mum. Clem was clearly frustrated. Both of you will regret this attitude one day. Martha rolled her eyes. Clem, don't be dramatic. Jasmine walked toward the door. Julie followed her. Jasmine. She turned. Julie lowered her voice. Please don't drink tonight. Jasmine stared at her. You sound like my father. I just want you to be safe. I'll be fine. She opened the door. Before stepping outside, she looked back at Julie. For a brief moment, their eyes met. Julie felt something inside her tighten. Please come back safely, she whispered. Jasmine didn't answer. She stepped into the rain. Her car disappeared through the gates. Julie stood by the window until the taillights vanished. She didn't know why she felt so uneasy. She returned to the kitchen and tried to continue working. But she couldn't concentrate. Across town, Jasmine arrived at the party. The music was loud. People were dancing. Drinks were everywhere. She quickly forgot about the rain. Hours passed. Jasmine drank more than she usually did. Her friends tried to convince her to stay the night. But she refused. I can drive. You've been drinking, one of her friends warned. I said I'm fine. You should call someone. I don't need a driver. She picked up her bag. I'll see you tomorrow. Outside, the rain was still falling. Jasmine entered her car. She started the engine. The roads were slippery and visibility was poor. She drove slowly at first. Then her phone rang. She glanced at it. It was her mother. She ignored the call. A few minutes later, the phone rang again. This time, she picked it up. Hello. Where are you? Martha asked. I'm on my way home. Be careful. I know. They ended the call. Jasmine placed the phone down. She continued driving. Then, suddenly, a motorcycle appeared in front of her. An Okada rider was trying to cross the road. Jasmine slammed on the brakes. The tires lost traction. The car swerved. She tried to regain control. But it was too late. The vehicle crashed off the road. The impact was violent. Jasmine's head struck the steering wheel. Her body went limp. People nearby rushed toward the vehicle. Someone called an ambulance. The Okada rider had also fallen, but Jasmine's condition was more serious. Within minutes, she was rushed to the hospital. Back at the mansion, Julie was still awake. It was almost 1 in the morning. She was sitting in the living room when Martha's phone rang. Martha answered. Her face changed instantly. What? Clem looked at her. What happened? Martha couldn't speak. She ended the call and stood there trembling. Jasmine had an accident. Julie immediately stood up. What? She was taken to the hospital. Julie didn't wait. She rushed toward the door. Clem followed. Martha grabbed her handbag. Within minutes, they were on their way to the hospital. When they arrived, doctors were already working on Jasmine. She has lost a lot of blood, the doctor explained. We need to stabilize her. Martha began crying. Please save my daughter. We're doing everything we can. The doctor looked at Clem. We need blood urgently. Clem nodded. Use mine. They tested him. He wasn't compatible. Martha was tested next. She wasn't compatible either. The family began contacting relatives, friends, anyone who might be able to help. But none of the available donors matched. Then a nurse asked if there was anyone else in the household who could be tested. Martha hesitated. She looked toward Julie. Julie immediately stepped forward. Test me. Martha's eyes widened. Julie, please. The nurse took Julie to the testing room. Minutes later, she returned. The nurse looked relieved. She is compatible. Julie didn't hesitate. Take my blood. The blood transfusion began. Julie sat quietly while her blood was collected. She closed her eyes. All she could think about was the little girl she had held 22 years earlier. Please let my child live. Hours later, the doctors finally stabilized Jasmine. The family breathed again. But nobody noticed something strange. The woman who had spent 22 years being called a maid had just given her own blood to save the life of the child she had secretly given birth to.
Are you her real mother?
And when Jasmine eventually woke up, she would begin asking questions. Questions that would threaten to destroy the secret Clem, Martha and Julie had protected for more than 2 decades. Jasmine opened her eyes slowly. The first thing she noticed was the white ceiling above her. Then came the pain. Her head throbbed and her body felt weak. She tried to move her arm but immediately winced. A nurse noticed. You're awake. Jasmine looked around. Where am I? You're in the hospital. The memory came back in pieces. The party. The rain. The road. The motorcycle. Then the crash. My parents. They're here. A few moments later, Clem and Martha entered the room. Martha immediately rushed to her. My baby. She hugged Jasmine carefully. I thought I was going to lose you. Jasmine closed her eyes. I'm okay. Clem stood beside the bed. You scared us. I'm sorry, Dad. He nodded. The important thing is that you're alive. Jasmine looked at both of them. Something about their faces made her realize how close she had come to dying. For the first time, she felt genuinely frightened. What happened? You lost a lot of blood, Clem explained. Jasmine swallowed. I remember. You needed a transfusion. She looked at him. Who gave me blood? Martha immediately became quiet. Jasmine noticed. Who? Clem looked toward the door. Julie. Jasmine frowned. Julie? Yes. The answer surprised her. The maid. Martha looked uncomfortable. She was tested and happened to be compatible. Jasmine stared at her mother. Why didn't you give me blood? We were tested. And? We weren't compatible. Jasmine looked at Clem. Dad. Same thing. She turned back to Martha. So Julie saved my life? Martha nodded reluctantly. Yes. Jasmine fell silent. For some reason, the information bothered her. Not because she was ungrateful, but because it didn't make sense. Julie had always been there. Whenever Jasmine was sick as a child, Julie was there. Whenever she came home late, Julie waited. Whenever she was in trouble, Julie worried. And now Julie had literally given her blood. Jasmine shook the thought away. She was still recovering. Perhaps she was simply confused. But the questions continued. The next morning, Julie entered the hospital room carrying a bowl of warm food. Jasmine. Jasmine looked up. Julie smiled faintly. How are you feeling? Better. I brought you something to eat. Jasmine stared at her. For the first time in years, she really looked at Julie. Not as the woman who cleaned her room. Not as the woman who worked in the house. She looked at her face. Her hands. There was something familiar. Something she couldn't explain. Julie. Yes. Why did you give me your blood? Julie smiled. Because you needed it. You didn't hesitate? No. Why? Julie paused. Because I care about you. Jasmine stared at her. Julie quickly looked away. Eat before the food gets cold. She placed the bowl on the table. Then she left. Jasmine watched her walk away. The words stayed in her mind. Because I care about you. That afternoon, Jasmine noticed something else. When she went to the bathroom, she lifted her hospital gown slightly and looked at her back. There was a small birthmark near her shoulder. She had had it since she was a baby. She remembered once joking about it with her friends. Then she remembered Julie. Julie had the exact same mark. Jasmine had noticed it years earlier when Julie was changing clothes. At the time, she had thought nothing of it. Now it suddenly seemed important. She returned to her room. She picked up her phone. She searched online. Birthmarks could be inherited. But that wasn't enough. She needed answers. When she was discharged several days later, she returned home. But she wasn't the same Jasmine who had left for that party. She was quiet, observant, suspicious. She watched Julie. She watched Martha. She watched her father. And she began noticing things she had ignored for years. One evening, Julie was folding Jasmine's clothes. Jasmine walked into the room. Julie. Yes. How long have you worked for my family? Julie paused. Since before you were born. Jasmine's heart skipped. Before I was born? Julie realized her mistake. Yes. She quickly looked down. I mean, I have been here for a very long time. Jasmine studied her. Did you know me when I was a baby? Julie smiled sadly. Yes. How? I was working here. Jasmine said nothing. Julie picked up the clothes and walked away. That night, Jasmine couldn't sleep. She kept thinking. Before I was born. The same birthmark. The blood. The way she has always cared about me. Something was wrong. She knew it. The next day, she decided to look for answers herself. She waited until her parents left the house. Then she went upstairs. She entered her father's study first. Nothing. Then the living room. Nothing. Finally, she entered her parents' bedroom. She began searching through drawers. Clothes. Jewelry. Old photographs. Documents. Nothing seemed important. Then she noticed a locked cabinet. She searched for the key. After several minutes, she found it inside one of Martha's drawers. Her hands trembled as she opened the cabinet. There were old files inside. Jasmine started going through them. Insurance documents. Medical records. Property papers. Then she found an envelope with no name on it. She opened it. The first page was an agreement. Her eyes moved across the words. She stopped breathing. She read it again. Then again. The document mentioned a young woman. A pregnancy. An agreement between her parents and the woman. And a promise that the woman would remain in the household after the child's birth. Jasmine's hands began shaking violently. She turned the page. Then she saw the name. Julie. Jasmine dropped the document. No. She picked it up again. No. This can't be true. Her eyes filled with tears. She searched through the remaining papers. There were hospital records. Payment receipts. A birth document. Everything pointed to the same truth. Julie had given birth to her. Jasmine covered her mouth. For 22 years, she had believed Martha was her biological mother. Now she discovered that the woman she had treated like a servant was the woman who had carried her. She stumbled backward. Her entire childhood suddenly looked different. The woman who cooked for her. The woman who waited for her. The woman who cared for her when she was sick. The woman she had slapped. The woman she had insulted. The woman she had called a dirty maid. Her mother. Jasmine's knees became weak. She sat on the floor holding the documents. Tears streamed down her face. But beneath the shock was something else. Anger. She wanted answers. And this time, she wasn't going to accept another lie. She gathered the documents and walked out of the room. When Clem and Martha returned home that evening, they found Jasmine waiting for them. The papers were spread across the table. Martha saw them. Her face went completely pale. Clem stopped in his tracks. Jasmine stood up. Her voice trembled. "Tell me the truth." Neither of them spoke. Jasmine held up the document. "Is Julie my mother?" The room fell silent. And for the first time in 22 years, the secret they had buried was sitting openly between them. "Is Julie my mother?" Jasmine's question hung in the room. Nobody answered. She looked from Martha to Clem. Her father's eyes dropped to the floor. Martha's lips trembled. "Jasmine, don't call my name." Martha froze. "Just tell me." Clem slowly pulled out a chair and sat down. "Jasmine, there are things about your birth that don't explain anything." She slammed the document onto the table. "I found this in your room." Martha's eyes filled with tears. "Where did you get that?" "So it's true." "Jasmine, is it true?" Her voice echoed through the mansion. Julie, who was downstairs, heard the shouting. She stopped what she was doing. For a moment, she simply stood there. She already knew. The secret was finally out. Upstairs, Jasmine was shaking. Clem looked at Martha. They had kept the truth for 22 years. But there was nowhere left to hide. "Yes," Clem finally said. Jasmine stared at him. "Yes, what?" He swallowed. "Julie is your biological mother." Jasmine's face went blank. She looked at Martha. "And you knew?" Martha nodded slowly. "You knew all these years?" "Yes." "You lied to me my entire life?" "I was afraid." Jasmine laughed bitterly. "Afraid of what?" Martha began crying. "I wanted a child so badly." "And you took hers?" "I didn't take you." "You did." Jasmine pointed toward the door. "You made her stay in this house and serve me like a maid while you pretended to be my mother." Martha couldn't answer. Jasmine turned to Clem. "And you allowed it?" Clem lowered his head. "I made a promise." "A promise?" Jasmine's voice cracked. "You promised my mother that she could stay here, but you couldn't even tell me who she was? We thought we were protecting you." "Protecting me?" She laughed through her tears. "You protected yourselves." Clem had no answer. Jasmine looked down at the documents. Then her eyes landed on one particular page. It contained details of the arrangement made before her birth. She read it again. Then she looked at the people standing before her. "So Julie agreed because her mother needed money for an operation?" Clem nodded. "Yes." Jasmine's expression changed. "You paid for her mother's operation?" "Yes." She stared at him. "And after she gave birth to me, you made her stay here?" "She wanted to stay." Jasmine shook her head. "She wanted to stay because she wanted to watch me grow." Her voice became softer. "She wanted to be close to me." Martha began crying harder. Jasmine looked toward the door. And there stood Julie. She had heard everything. Their eyes met. Jasmine stared at her. For a moment, neither woman moved. Then Jasmine's expression hardened. "How could you?" Julie looked confused. "How could I what, my child? Why didn't you tell me?" Julie's eyes filled with tears. "I couldn't." "You could have." "I promised." "You promised them?" Julie nodded. "I was afraid that if I told you, they would take you away from me." Jasmine shook her head. "They already took you away from me." Julie looked down. That sentence broke her. "I am sorry." Jasmine stared at her. Then something inside her exploded. She looked at Julie from head to toe. The simple clothes. The worn hands. The woman she had spent years ordering around. The woman she had slapped. Her biological mother. "No." She backed away. "No, this can't be true." "Jasmine, how can you be my mother?" Julie cried. "I am." "You." Jasmine pointed at her. "The maid." Julie flinched. Jasmine immediately regretted the words, but she was too overwhelmed to stop. "How can someone like you be my mother?" Julie covered her mouth. Clem stepped forward. Jasmine, that's enough. No. She turned toward him. I have spent my entire life believing that Martha was my mother. She raised you. But Julie gave birth to me. Yes. Jasmine looked at Martha. Then what am I supposed to call you? Martha broke down. I don't know. For the first time, Jasmine saw her mother not as the powerful woman who always protected her, but as a frightened woman who had spent 22 years terrified of losing the child she had waited so long to have. But Jasmine couldn't forgive her yet. There was too much anger, too much confusion, and too much shame. She suddenly remembered every time she had insulted Julie, every time she had shouted at her, every time she had slapped her, every time she had watched Martha treat Julie badly and joined in. Her stomach turned. She looked at Julie. You should have told me. Julie wiped her tears. I wanted to. When? When you were old enough to understand. You waited 22 years. I was afraid. Jasmine picked up her handbag. I can't stay here. Martha rushed toward her. Jasmine, please. Don't touch me. She grabbed her car keys. Where are you going? I don't know. Jasmine. She walked out. Julie remained standing in the middle of the room. She watched her daughter leave. Just as she had watched her walk away countless times before. But this time, Julie knew the truth had finally changed everything. Jasmine drove aimlessly through the city. She didn't know where she was going. Her mind was filled with memories. Julie tying her school ribbons. Julie sitting beside her when she had malaria. Julie waiting outside her school. Julie making her birthday cake when Martha was away. Julie wiping her tears. Julie standing silently while Jasmine slapped her. Jasmine suddenly pulled the car over. She began crying. What have I done? For the first time, she understood the cruelty of her own behavior. She hadn't simply mistreated a maid. She had mistreated the woman who gave birth to her. But she wasn't ready to return home. She needed somewhere safe. Someone she could talk to. So she drove to the home of her closest friend, Anita. Anita opened the door and immediately knew something was wrong. Jasmine? Jasmine broke down in her arms. Anita, everything I knew about my life is a lie. What happened? Jasmine struggled to speak. Then she told her everything. The secret. The documents. The blood transfusion. Julie. Her real mother. Anita stared at her in disbelief. My God. I treated her terribly. Jasmine cried. I called her names. I shouted at her. I even slapped her. Anita hugged her. You didn't know. But I should have been kinder. Anita's mother, Madame Claire, had been passing by when she overheard them. She stopped outside the room. She had heard enough. She entered quietly. Jasmine. Jasmine looked up. Madame Claire sat beside her. What happened cannot be changed. Jasmine wiped her tears. But you can decide what happens next. Those words were the beginning of a change Jasmine had never expected. Because before she could ask Julie for forgiveness, she first had to confront the person she had become. Jasmine spent the night at Anita's house. She barely slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Julie. Not the maid she had grown accustomed to ordering around. Not the woman who wore simple clothes and quietly moved around the Bayeux mansion. She saw the woman who had carried her for 9 months. The woman who had given her life. The woman who had stayed in the same house for 22 years just to watch her grow. Jasmine cried until morning. When she finally came downstairs, Madame Claire was already awake. She was sitting quietly in the living room. You didn't sleep, she said. Jasmine shook her head. I keep thinking about Julie. Madame Claire nodded. That is understandable. I don't know what to do. You cannot change what happened. I know. But you can change what happens from today. Jasmine sat beside her. I treated her terribly. Yes. Jasmine looked surprised by the blunt answer. Madame Claire continued. You made mistakes. Serious ones. But guilt alone will not repair anything. What should I do? First, accept the truth. Jasmine nodded. Then accept responsibility for your behavior. She paused. And most importantly, don't make your mother's pain about your own shame. Jasmine looked down. Madame Claire reached for her hand. Julie has spent 22 years watching you grow. She has probably imagined this moment many times. Jasmine's eyes filled with tears. What if she hates me? She doesn't. How do you know? Because if she hated you, she would not have given you her blood. Jasmine became silent. Those words hit her deeply. Julie had saved her life without hesitation. Even after everything Jasmine had done to her. That was the kind of love Jasmine had never understood. Madame Claire suggested that Jasmine spend some time reflecting before returning home. She also encouraged her to pray. Jasmine agreed. Later that day, she went to church with Madame Claire. She sat quietly during the service. For the first time, she wasn't asking God for money, success, or protection. She was asking for forgiveness. She thought about her behavior. The parties. The drinking. The smoking. The lies. The way she spoke to people. The way she had treated Julie. She cried throughout the service. Afterward, she spoke privately with the priest and confessed the things she had done. She didn't try to justify herself. She didn't say she hadn't known Julie was her mother. She admitted that even before learning the truth, she had been wrong to treat another human being with such cruelty. She took communion and left the church feeling different. Not completely healed, but determined. Over the next few days, Jasmine began making changes. She stopped drinking. She threw away the cigarettes in her room. She stopped going to late-night parties. She began spending more time alone. She started thinking about the kind of person she wanted to become. One afternoon, she sat with Anita and talked about her childhood. My parents were barely around, Jasmine said. Anita listened. My father was always busy with his business. And your mother? She was always traveling for her lace business. Jasmine smiled sadly. I used to complain that they didn't attend enough of my school events. She looked down. But Julie was always there. Anita nodded. She was the one who came to my school plays. Jasmine's voice cracked. She knew my teachers. She knew my favorite food. She knew every friend I had. When I got sick, she slept beside me. When I hurt myself, she treated me. When I was scared, she stayed. She wiped her tears. And I treated her like she was nothing. Anita hugged her. You didn't know the truth. Jasmine shook her head. That doesn't make what I did right. Meanwhile, back at the Bayeux mansion, Julie had barely spoken. She continued working as usual. But everything felt different. The secret was no longer a secret. She wondered what Jasmine would do. Would she return? Would she reject her? Would she ever call her mother? Julie had waited 22 years for that word. But now that the truth was out, she was afraid to hope for it. Martha was also struggling. She had spent years convincing herself that keeping Jasmine was the only way to protect her family. But now she saw the damage her fear had caused. She remembered every time she had humiliated Julie. Every time she had encouraged Jasmine to treat her badly. She remembered the way Julie had quietly endured everything. One evening, Martha entered Julie's room. Julie looked up. Ma. Martha stood at the doorway. For a moment, she couldn't speak. Then she walked inside. I want to apologize. Julie stared at her. Martha's eyes filled with tears. I know an apology cannot erase what I did. Julie remained silent. I was afraid of losing Jasmine. You were afraid of me? Yes. Martha nodded. I was afraid that if Jasmine knew you were her mother, she would love you more than me. Julie shook her head. I never wanted to take her from you. I know that now. Martha sat down. You gave me the greatest gift of my life. She wiped her face. And I spent years treating you like an enemy. Julie looked at her. I forgave you a long time ago. Martha began crying. Why? Because I didn't want hatred to take away the little time I had with Jasmine. Martha covered her face. That night, for the first time, the two women sat together without pretending. They talked about Jasmine. They talked about the past. They talked about the years they had lost. And somewhere else, Jasmine was preparing to go home. She knew she couldn't stay away forever. She knew there was only one thing left to do. She had to face Julie. Not as a maid. Not as an employee. Not as the woman she had spent years looking down on. But as her mother. The next morning, Jasmine stood outside the Bayo mansion. Her hands were shaking. She took a deep breath. Then she opened the gate. She walked inside. Julie was sitting quietly in the living room. The moment she saw Jasmine, she stood. Neither woman spoke. Jasmine slowly walked toward her. Her eyes filled with tears. Then, without saying a word, she dropped to her knees. Julie gasped. Jasmine. Jasmine reached for her hands. I'm sorry, Mum. Julie froze. It was the first time Jasmine had ever called her that. And after 22 years of waiting, the word finally came. I have forgiven you, my child. Julie stood completely still. She looked down at Jasmine, who was kneeling in front of her with tears streaming down her face. For 22 years, Julie had imagined hearing that one word, mother, but she had never imagined it would happen like this. Jasmine held tightly onto her hands. Mum, please forgive me. Julie could barely breathe. She reached down and pulled Jasmine up. My child. The moment Jasmine stood, Julie wrapped her arms around her. They both broke down. I am sorry, Jasmine cried against her shoulder. I'm sorry for everything. Julie held her tightly. I have forgiven you, my child. Jasmine sobbed harder. I treated you so badly. You didn't know. But I should have known better. Julie pulled away and wiped her tears. You were young. No. Jasmine shook her head. Don't make excuses for me. Julie looked at her daughter. I was the one who chose to stay. Why? Julie smiled through her tears. Because you were here. She touched Jasmine's face. Every day I could see you was enough for me. Jasmine began crying again. I don't understand how you endured everything. Julie looked down. Sometimes I cried. I know. But every morning I got up again. Why? Because you were my daughter. Jasmine hugged her again. This time, there was no distance between them. No secret. No pretending. Just a mother and her daughter. Martha stood a few steps away. She had watched everything. She couldn't hold back her tears anymore. She slowly walked toward Julie. Julie. Julie turned. Martha stood in front of her. I am sorry. Julie remained silent. I know I have said it before, but I need you to hear me. Martha took a shaky breath. I was jealous of you. Julie looked surprised. I was afraid that Jasmine would love you more than me. She wiped her tears. I was afraid people would find out the truth. I was afraid of what everyone would say. And because of that fear, I treated you terribly. Julie didn't interrupt. Martha continued. You gave me what I could never give myself. A child. You allowed me to experience motherhood. And instead of being grateful, I treated you like competition. Julie finally reached for her hand. It is over. Martha looked at her. You forgive me? I do. Martha broke down and hugged her. Jasmine watched the two women. For the first time, she understood that both of them had been carrying pain for years. One had given birth to her. The other had raised her. And both had loved her in their own complicated ways. Chief Clem walked into the room. He looked at his wife. Then at Julie. Then at Jasmine. He had spent years trying to keep the family together. Now he finally knew that the only way forward was to stop hiding from the past. Julie, he said. She turned. There is something I want to give you. He handed her a set of keys. Julie looked confused. What is this? The keys to your new car. She stared at him. My car. Yes. Clem, I can't accept this. You can. He smiled. You have spent more than 20 years taking care of everyone else. It is time someone took care of you. Julie looked at Jasmine. Then back at Clem. Tears filled her eyes. But he wasn't finished. I also bought you a house. Julie gasped. A house? Yes. He pointed toward the keys. It is right next to ours. Julie couldn't speak. Clem smiled. Now you can stay close to your daughter without having to work as a maid. Jasmine immediately hugged Julie. Mom, you deserve it. Julie began laughing through her tears. For the first time in years, her happiness wasn't something she had to hide. She had a home. She had security. She had her daughter. And she could finally live her own life. A few months later, Julie moved into her new house. Jasmine moved in with her. It took time for them to adjust. There were awkward moments. There were emotional conversations. There were stories Jasmine wanted to hear about her childhood. There were memories Julie had kept hidden for years. Jasmine wanted to know everything. What was I like as a baby? Julie laughed. You cried a lot. Jasmine smiled. Really? You hated sleeping. They both laughed. Did I look like you? Julie smiled. You had my eyes. Jasmine touched her face. I wish I had known. Julie reached for her hand. What matters is that you know now. Jasmine still visited the Bayo mansion regularly. She refused to abandon Martha. She understood that Martha had made terrible mistakes, but she had also raised her with love. Martha, for her part, changed. She no longer treated Julie as a servant. She treated her as family. The three women eventually became closer than anyone imagined. Jasmine also changed completely. The reckless young woman who once spent nights drinking and partying was gone. She became more disciplined, more respectful, more compassionate. She began treating everyone around her with dignity, regardless of their social status. One afternoon, Jasmine saw a young housemaid struggling to carry several bags. She immediately helped her. Let me take some. The maid looked surprised. Thank you, Ma. Jasmine smiled. Then she remembered something. Years earlier, she would have simply ordered the girl around. She finally understood that a person's job did not determine their worth. Later that evening, Jasmine sat beside Julie on the veranda. She rested her head on her mother's shoulder. Mom. Yes. Do you regret it? Regret what? Everything. Julie thought for a moment. No. Not even the way they treated you? Julie smiled. I regret the pain. But not you. Jasmine held her hand. I wish I could give you back all those years. You can't. I know. Julie looked at her. But you can make the years ahead beautiful. Jasmine smiled. I will. Julie kissed her forehead. The secret that had once brought so much pain had finally brought the family together. For 22 years, Julie had lived in that mansion as a maid. She had cooked. She had cleaned. She had served. She had endured insults. She had cried in silence. But through it all, she stayed for one reason. Her daughter. And eventually, the daughter who had once looked down on her finally discovered the truth. The woman she thought was beneath her was the woman who had given her life. The maid she had treated with contempt was her mother. And the greatest lesson Jasmine learned was simple. Never judge a person's worth by the position they hold. Because sometimes, the person you look down on may be the one who has loved you the most. And sometimes, the person you call a maid may be the mother who sacrificed her entire life just to stay close to you.